Hello everyone. Today I'm here with the explanation of the second part of the poem A Thing of Beauty, written by John Keats. So before I go ahead with the interpretation of this part of the poem, let us all try to recapitulate what we have learned from this poem so far. Well, my dear students, let me reiterate that a thing of beauty is an amazing asset in our life. Being surrounded by an incredible treasure of beautiful memories is indeed a rewarding experience in itself. We have also seen how an unforgettable thing of beauty can act as a catalyst or an impetus to alleviate our pangs of sorrow and suffering. At the same time, let us not forget how life throws up with difficult challenges, hardships, and setbacks from time to time. In those trying times of our life, there is only one thing which can really provide us consolation, something that we all can count on and look up to in our moments of distress. So, what is this something all about? This is a thing of beauty which always guards us against the prevailing negativities in our mind, with a reassurance that no matter what, everything is going to be fine one day, and that life after all has to go on. So, my dear students, this is what we have learned from the first part of the poem, A Thing of Beauty. Let us now take up the second part of the poem. Alright, so let me begin. Such the sun, the moon, trees old and young, sprouting a shady boon for simple sheep, and such are daffodils with the green world they live in, and clear rills that for themselves a cooling covert make against the hot season. The mid-forest brake, rich with a sprinkling of fair musk rose bloomings. So now the poet alludes to some of the wonders of nature which fascinate us all the time. Firstly, the poet makes a mention of the glorious sun which radiates positive energy. Secondly, he talks about the moon, which is again another divine manifestation of nature's beauty. Thirdly, the poet brings to our mind images of trees as another beautiful gift of nature. He further elaborates by saying that trees, old and young alike, sprout a shady boon for simple sheep. So this means that trees sprout or envelop, or they make a kind of protective canopy for the animals as simple and innocent as the sheep. Alright, so we see that nature's magical touch has an impact on every single creature in this world, be it big or small. So the reference to the trees enveloping a shade is a perfect example of imagery, as it conjures up a vivid image of trees spreading their branches and forming a canopy to provide shelter and comfort to the animals. So remember students, shady bone is an example of imagery. Alright. Here we have another poetic device, which is antithesis. So in these few words, trees old and young, we find the use of the poetic device antithesis. So what is meant by antithesis? Well, my dear students, antithesis, which literally means opposite, is a rhetorical device in which two opposite ideas are put together in a sentence to achieve a contrasting effect. So here, as you all can see, trees old and young are put together. This is done by the poet to achieve a contrasting effect. Hence, it is antithesis. Next of all, the poet introduces another striking image of the daffodils, the blooming flowers of daffodils, which captivate our minds with their stunning beauty. Let me tell you, my dear students, that a gift of daffodils is said to ensure happiness in one's life. And here the poet says that the daffodil flowers live in or they grow in the bountiful world of nature. Here is the use of a poetic device, and let me introduce you all to this poetic device now. See, all of you. The poet says, such are daffodils with the green world they live in. Look at the two words, green world. By this, the poet means the world of nature. So, it is the perfect example of metonymy. Alright, now what is metonymy? It is a figure of speech that replaces the name of a thing with the name of something else with which it is closely associated. So, by saying green world, actually the poet refers to the world of nature, and that is why it is metonymy. Alright, let us not forget the use of another significant poetic device here, and that is, of course, imagery. Alright, when the poet says daffodils with a green world they live in, immediately we get transported into the scenic beauty of the daffodil flowers blooming somewhere in the forest. Alright, so this is the perfect example of imagery. Alright, so talking about daffodils has reminded me of a very beautiful poem, a very well-known poem of English literature, which was written by William Wordsworth. So, my dear students, let me now take you all to the world of poetry again, and let us see and listen to the narration of this beautiful poem, Daffodils, and then we'll discuss something about that particular poem. All right.
Lonely as a Cloud by William Wordsworth. I wandered, lonely as a cloud that floats on high o'er vales and hills, when all at once I saw a crowd, a host of golden daffodils, beside the lake, beneath the trees, fluttering and dancing in the breeze. Continuous as the stars that shine and twinkle on the Milky Way, they stretched in never-ending line along the margin of the bay. 10,000 saw I at a glance, tossing their heads in sprightly dance. The waves beside them danced, but they outdid the sparkling waves in glee. A poet could not but be gay in such a jocund company. I gazed and gazed, but little thought what wealth the show to me had brought. For oft, when on my couch I lie, in vacant or in pensive mood, they flash upon that inward eye, which is the bliss of solitude. And then my heart with pleasure fills, and dances with the daffodils.
So, in the poem Daffodils by William Wordsworth, the poet says that wandering like a cloud, floating above the hills and valleys, he encountered a host of daffodils beside a lake. The poet could not help but be happy in such a joyful company of flowers. At that time, he did not realize what wealth the spectacular scene would bring unto his life. For now, whenever he finds himself in pensive or sad mood, the moment when he had encountered the daffodil flowers turns out to be a kind of comforting sensation for him, because the memory of that blissful experience suddenly fills the poet's mind with pleasure and happiness. All right, so we all can find a reflection of similar ideas of the poem A Thing of Beauty in the poem Daffodils by William Wordsworth. You see, here also in the poem Daffodils, the poet has encountered some very beautiful flowers of daffodils. So that was a sweet memory of the poet's communion with the daffodil flowers. And moments later, when the poet was in a pensive mood, he recollected the sweet memory of his communion with the daffodil flowers, and this suddenly has brought about a change in his mood. Alright, so such is the effect of a thing of beauty in our minds. Alright, so we all can find some relevance of the poem Daffodils with regard to the poem that we're reading, that is A Thing of Beauty. Alright. Now the poet draws our attention to another beautiful imagery, and that is clear rills. My dear students, clear rills refer to small streams. Alright, and the poet says clear rills that for themselves a cooling covert make against the hot season. By this, the poet means that the small streams are a treasure house, a storehouse of water, a much felt necessity in the times when we have a hot or dry spell of weather conditions. Alright, so what do these small streams do for us? The small streams make a cooling covert, which means they make a cooling effect for themselves against the hot season. So first of all, this particular process of making a cooling effect for themselves is significant because it brings to our mind an image of nature working out in its own splendid way to overcome any challenge. Alright, the challenge here is the hot, dry season. And during the hot season times, clear reels always come up with refreshing water. As such, the refreshing water can very well be likened to the elixir of life. Alright? So people or even wild animals can very well go near the small streams and quench their thirst. Alright? And thereby deriving refreshment even during a hot season. So this is what the poet means by the lines clear reels, which make for themselves a kind of cooling effect. So here is this poetic device of imagery being used by the poets in the words clear reels. Alright? There is another poetic device, and that is alliteration. You see the repetition of the consonant sound C in the two words cooling coverts. Alright, so this is alliteration. Next, the poet draws a reference to the mid-forest break, which brings to our mind an image of the thick forest undergrowth. Now, what does the poet say here? The mid-forest brake, rich with a sprinkling of fair musk rose blooms. The poet enjoys nature's beauty in the thick forest undergrowth, which is brimming with the growth of musk rose flowers. Alright, so the mid forest break, that is the thick forest undergrowth, is made enriched with the blooming of the fair musk rose flowers. Once again, let me tell you, my dear students, that the poet has made extensive use of imagery in this poem. And in these few lines also, we have come across the use of imagery. Alright? First of all, it is the reference to the mid-forest break, and then it is the fair musk rose blooms. Both these ideas together conjures up vivid images of the thick forest undergrowth as well as the blooming of the fair musk rose flowers. So it is again the poetic device called imagery. Alright, there is another poetic device being used by the poet in these few lines. Alright, you see, against the hot season. Of course, it is the hot season, but then by referring to the two words hot season, the poet actually means the summer time. So it is metonymy, about which I have already discussed with you all. So we see that in these few lines of the poem, the poet has drawn a reference to many of the beautiful objects of nature. According to the poet, nature is always abundant. It is abundant with so many beautiful things which give fascination and delight to the human mind. Let us now take up the concluding part of the poem, A Thing of Beauty. So I begin. And such too is the grandeur of the dooms we have imagined for the mighty dead, all lovely tales that we have heard or read, an endless fountain of immortal drink, pouring unto us from the heavens' brink. So, my dear students, here the poet has added a different dimension to the very concept of a thing of beauty. So far, so long, whatever we have read about a thing of beauty was basically all about the different aspects of the beautiful nature. But here the poet adds a different perspective to the very conception of a thing of beauty. So, what is exactly the poet talking about here? Let me explain. All right. The poet says that there is grandeur, which means greatness or glory. So there is grandeur even in the concept of dooms, which means death or destruction. So there is greatness or glory even in a concept like death or destruction. So beauty need not just be associated with the objects of nature or nature in general. Rather, beauty can also be found in the very perception of death or destruction. Alright, so here let me again elucidate. Alright, the poet says that there is beauty to be found even in the very conception of death or destruction. So, my dear students, let us try to understand it better. Alright, you see, nature is an ever flourishing aspect. Alright, nature keeps on thriving all the time. Alright, it gives us perennial satisfaction and happiness in our life. So there is a continuity in the very elements of nature. Nature is always alive in front of us, always giving, always generous in pouring, in showering on the human beings immense benefits. All right, so this is the growth aspect of nature. In contrast to this growing aspect of nature, we have another very important aspect of a thing of beauty, and that is the concept of death or destruction. So both these ideas are quite opposite, you see. Point number one is nature with all its continuity. All right, nature that is always permanent. Whereas, in sharp contrast to this particular image, we have the concept of death or destruction, which is, of course, a negative perception. But then the poet says there is even greatness or glory in this very perception of dooms or death or destruction. So, what is that exactly? Okay, let me come to the point. So we have imagined for the mighty dead. Now the poet says, mighty dead. It means people, the great men who have glorified their dead. So the poet is not just talking about the death of ordinary people. Rather, he talks about the death of extraordinary people in this world. All right, people who have led an exemplary life for all of us to emulate. Okay, so here, of course, it is mighty dead, which means a kind of poetic device used by the poet, and that is oxymoron, because there is the use of two contrasting ideas here. One is the concept of mighty, which means powerful, okay, and then you have the image of death. So by this the poet means the death of all such noble people or great people who have led an exemplary life in front of us. Okay, people who have sacrificed their lives for the sake of humanity, people who have immensely contributed for the progress of human civilization. All right, so reading about all such great people is itself a very fulfilling experience on our part, because the more we read or hear about such inspiring stories of great people, the more inspiration or motivation we can derive from that experience of reading about such great people. That is why the poet says, all lovely tales that we have heard or read. Alright, so basically, the poet draws our attention to the concept of a thing of beauty. And according to the poet, beauty is also to be found in the immortal lives led by some of the great people in this world. So apparently, it is the conception of death or degeneration, but even then also there is some element of beauty to be cherished, to be gathered from this particular conception of death. So this is what the poet wants to say from these three lines of the poem. Well, my dear students, talking about the greatness or glory of death has reminded me of some of the immortal souls India has ever produced. So let me draw your attention to some of the real heroes of our country, India. What you can see on the screen is a compilation of three of the pictures of such heroes or legends. Alright? So on the screen on the left hand side, you do have the picture of Lieutenant Manoj Kumar Pandey, one of the Kargil heroes of India. Lieutenant Manoj Kumar Pandey was an officer of the Indian Army, and let me tell you that he was posthumously awarded with India's highest military honor, that is Param Veer Chakra, alright, for his valiant courage and exemplary leadership qualities during adverse times. Let me tell you, my dear students, that Lieutenant Manoj Kumar Pandey used to maintain a personal diary where he penned down everything that he had learned on a daily basis. Once Manoj Kumar Pandey had written some lines which are so beautiful even to read out. Alright? He said, some goals are so worthy that it's glorious even to fail. Such beautiful lines which infuse into your minds a lot of positivity, and we all are simply left wonderstruck and filled with a deep sense of gratitude for such people. Look at the second picture now. It relates to another Kargil hero and a Param Veer Chakra awardee, Captain Vikram Batra, who was instrumental in the victory of the Indian Army in the Kargil War. Captain Vikram Batra was a valiant soldier himself. During the Kargil war, he got severely injured. However, undaunted, he did not even care for his personal injuries. He continued to lead the assault, and finally he gave the much needed motivation to his army men by saying, "Don't spare them." He had lost his life while trying to save the life of one of the fellow soldiers. Captain Vikram Batra said to one of his friends before leaving for the war. He said, "I will either come back after raising the Indian flag in victory or return wrapped in it." Such touching lines. See what is written here. Ye dil mange more. The beautiful lines from the advertising slogan. Captain Vikram Batra had made these lines the motto of his life. So India really salutes these immortal heroes of our country. Alright? Well, my dear students, finally, let us have a look at this picture. It relates to Khudiram Bose, one of the youngest martyrs of India's struggle for independence. Khudiram Bose was a revolutionary. He loved his country immensely and fought against the British. He was hanged to death in the year 1908 at the tender age of 19. Once Khudiram Bose said, "You cannot give any sentence worse than death to me. It is a misfortune that I could not serve much to my country." Such inspiring words again. So, my dear students, these are the immortal souls in the real sense of the term. These people have really glorified death, and this is what the poet John Keats says when he mentions about mighty death in his poem. So, my dear students, we have read how the glory of death is being interpreted by the poet. Alright? So, reading about the stories of great people always inspires us. Such stories resonate through the centuries and continue to motivate people for all the times. Alright? Now let us come to the concluding two lines of the poem. Here the poet says, "An endless fountain of immortal drink pouring unto us from the heavens brink." Now you see, the poet has compared beauty to an endless fountain of immortal drink. Alright? Immortal drink means nectar or elixir of life. Alright? And this particular fountain pours from the heavens brink. And this fountain runs immortally, producing nectar for all the human beings. Okay? For their peace, harmony, happiness, and overall sense of well-being, enabling human beings the strength to fight against any of the odds of life. So here in these last two lines of the poem, the poet has compared beauty to an immortal drink. So beauty is a source of immortal inspiration, never-ending motivation or inspiration for all the human beings. And this is like a divine blessing for all of us. That is why it pours unto us from the heavens brink. So beauty is, after all, a divine gift of God. So the Almighty showers a rich treasure of beautiful things for the happiness, contentment, and gratification of all the human beings. And we all can really derive the much needed happiness, satisfaction, joy, and contentment whenever we are surrounded by the blissful things called things of beauty. So, this is what the poet means by the concluding lines here. As you all can see, there is a poetic device in the words endless fountain, alright? And the poetic device is imagery, because reading about these few words really builds up an image of a fountain. My dear students, this fountain is nothing but the fountain of eternal happiness and contentment in our life. Okay, and we all can get the source of this particular happiness and contentment in our life from a thing of beauty. There is another poetic device here, and that is metaphor. Look at the two words, immortal drink. So why is it a metaphor? It is because by immortal drink, the poet actually refers to a nectar or a kind of elixir of life, something that is a source of eternal inspiration for all the human beings. Again, look at the two words, heaven's brink. Here also you get to see the use of the poetic device metaphor because of the implicit comparison of heaven's brink to a blessing or a gift from the Almighty. Alright? So I hope that you all were able to comprehend the poem A Thing of Beauty. And with this note that we all must cherish the beautiful things in life, let me conclude the interpretation of this poem, A Thing of Beauty. Thank you.